Welcome to Letters to My Therapist. I am Maria Antonia Alfonso.
And I'm Gilza Martinez. And we're here to talk about how to start dating after you've become a widow. So, our writer today says, "Hello, therapists. I am writing to ask for your advice. I am a widow of 6 years now and have not started to date as of yet. Friends and family members often ask me about when I plan to date. The truth is that I have no desire at this time to date. I don't have the desire to go through the process of trying to get to know another person or to take the time to grow a relationship. At this present time in my life, I feel as if I will never date again. And I have actually prepared myself for what I perceive to be my reality. Several people have said to me that 5 years is enough time to move on and start dating. And so she asks us, Mari, is this normal? What are your thoughts?
Well, initially, normal is a concept that we know normal is what the majority of the people do, but it doesn't mean that something is right or wrong. Then, whatever is good for you is what it is normal for you. Grieving is a very personal process. So part of what could be going on here is that you're going through your own process. And I want to tell this person your grief is your grief. No process is the same for people. So those people that are telling you 5 years is the mark, I will say from our point of view, there is not a magic number.
Right.
And then we can go into details, and there are a few things that we would like to maybe put in your perspective for you to think about. But all those people that are telling you is the 5 years mark, you can tell them, no, it's not.
I agree, Mani. I think that the concept of grieving, and particularly in our country here, we really feel like we just have to kind of like move everything along, like everything just has to happen in, faster is better, bigger is better. And the reality is that grief is a very unique and a very personal journey, and that everybody has to figure that out sort of for themselves. That being said, though, as you said, we would like to make a few recommendations, a few things to think about, because there is times when we get stuck along that journey, right? And maybe some things to pay attention to, right?
Yes. So one thing that will be interesting will be how old this person is. Is there any difference if the person was younger or the person was older? Like, what do you think about this?
Well, I think that is an important point. Our writer doesn't tell us where they are, what stage of life they're in, but I do think that if this was a person who was younger, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s, I would really want them to consider that life expectancy at this point in the world is 80 to 85, and how you want to spend those other 30, 40, 50 years, and whether you want to spend that on your own without a partner. What would that look like? Because that's a long time. Okay. And as human beings, we tend to be social beings. We tend to want to be in relationship with other people. And so, younger, I would really want to. Somebody was in their 60s, 70s, maybe they'd had a relationship that was 40, 50 years. Maybe that's a different life view, right? And so the questions, the basic questions might be similar recommendations, but we would understand, or I think that their perspective, their life perspective, might be different than somebody who's in their 30s or 40s, right?
Exactly. And then if that is the situation, that the person potentially could have still like a very long like lifespan, and they are considering, because it's interesting what she said here, I prepare myself for what I perceive to be my reality,
Right.
so that is not going to change. So we will want to start asking questions. Are you feeling depressed? what is behind this is sadness. What is behind this is the fact that you are still having a very active grieving. You're still missing this person, and it's more related to that process, or is there some type of fear? Because if that was a relationship that was like long, this person maybe haven't been dating for years.
Right.
So maybe you feel like you don't have the skills to kind of like start this process again. So,
Exactly.
so what other things could be that that we want this person to explore? If there is any depression, if there is any fear, what other emotions maybe we would like to ask?
Well, and I think let's make the distinction between depression, right, and sadness and grieving,
Okay.
because I think that when there is a loss, when we lose somebody through death in particular, there is a sense of sadness,
Mm-hmm.
and that sense of sadness is very normal.
Mm-hmm.
That sense of sadness for X amount of time is very normal. Okay. We step into, right, we cross the line into, or we want to be concerned about somebody going into depression when the sense of sadness is more often than not, when the sense of sadness is intense, right? So it's about duration, it's about frequency, it's about intensity. Okay. If the only thing that the person is thinking about is that kind of sadness about this loss, as you said, we have kind of stepped into a little bit more of a depressive episode. But if this is something that, even if it happened, as she says here, 6 years ago, and she has a sense of loss that is um, clings to her, we would want to help her to kind of make those distinctions, sadness, depression, grieving. I would want you to really give some thought to how would you make those things different, and distinct.
Yes, and the process of the grieving for different situations
Hmm.
is kind of like different when somebody pass away. So it's more like what is missing, what
Hmm.
is lacking. And sometimes we have find that people kind of like tend to remember more like the positive
Hmm.
aspects. I have clients that talk about idealizing more and being more difficult to
Hmm.
overcome a loss for
Hmm.
somebody that passed away,
Hmm.
because really there wasn't a problem.
Hmm.
Like it's not like you fought with your partner
Right.
and you had a very hard situation and there was a betrayal. So when those type of things happen, sometimes the anger kind of like help you to get over.
Helps to move you.
Yeah,
Yes.
but when there is the loss in this way, like you focus more your attention in what you don't have,
Right.
and it's harder really to get to the stage of acceptance. So we have to understand that and kind of like give some room
And
for
give
that.
some room, right? So those things, those feelings are important, right? Is Are we doing grieving? Are we doing sadness? Are we doing more depression? What stage of the grieving cycle? And we've talked about this before, right? The 5 stages of the grieving cycle, that you, after you've hit and obviously after 6 years, she's past the stage of shock and denial.
Denial.
But it does sound like there is a bit of her being a little bit stuck in the stage of sadness, and in the stage of not really wanting to move, not really wanting to, right. She doesn't talk a lot about anger. There just seems to be a little bit of like sadness, at least from what she's presenting to us. So there's that. What do you think about the possibility? You said fear.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think about the possibility of guilt?
That's one thing that sometimes some people that has been in this process mention, that they kind of like feel guilty. How come I'm going to have fun again? How come I'm gonna enjoy again
Mm-hmm.
if this person is not here
Mm-hmm.
anymore and cannot? And that's a totally normal emotion,
Mm-hmm.
but unfortunately the guilt paralyzes. So we want to invite for a reflection of that, kind of like explore if that is present in somehow, and see how that emotion can be accommodated, that how can that be processed, so
Mm-hmm.
you deal with that emotion and you are able to reframe that. We are
Mm-hmm.
not saying that that is happening, but
Yeah.
we kind of like giving you like a little bit of
The
food for
various
thought.
options, right? The various
Mm-hmm.
options, because I think guilt is a big one in
Mm-hmm.
loss and in death. I think guilt is a big one, as you said. How can I have fun when my partner's not here anymore? How could I go and, the process of letting go and of moving on? Our writer also doesn't make any statement about whether there's any children that came from this partnership. So there could be guilt in here also from, well, how can I replace this person in my children's life?
Mm-hmm.
What will they think of me doing that? So guilt has a variety of layers to it, right? For the self, for other people, for the other people that are significant to you, and sometimes even for the people that are not significant, right? What are other
Yes.
people going to say about me?
Yeah, and there is this sometimes this subconscious idea that somehow you are betraying
Mm-hmm.
that person, you're betraying
Absolutely.
that commitment. So those will be interesting questions, like just for you to think about a little bit. If at some point you kind of like feel that, and that translate into, I better don't touch this. I better don't think about this.
Mm-hmm.
So we really want to invite to your compassion for
Mm-hmm.
yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because this is a very sensitive topic, but at the same time, give yourself the room to kind of like explore
To
what is
explore.
behind that.
Yeah.
Now, we want to normalize that it's nothing wrong with you because you don't have that interest, but because at some point people made the conclusion like, I am past that. This is the stage of life that I am. I'm enjoying life as it is.
Right.
I have discovered some, pleasure and peace in this stage of life that I have created right
Mm-hmm.
now. And if that is a decision and
Right.
all of those emotions that we mentioned before has been explored and have been clear, you're totally free to have that decision. But
Right.
what we would like to invite is that we don't want you to make a decision because you are holding
Right.
on to negative emotions and you are kind of like creating that pressure on yourself in,
Absolutely.
in kind of like in an unconscious way.
Absolutely. The foundation of emotional health is being aware of what is happening inside you. And exploring all of those feelings doesn't necessarily mean that you have to act on them, but having the identifying them, labeling them as you call it, and being able to then more intentionally decide how to move forward. Now,
Mhm.
you've also talked about we really need to establish boundaries with people,
Mm.
because if this is what I want my life to look like and you're important in my life, how do you support me in that process versus how do you uh, criticize, which might be what she's hearing, criticism,
Mhm.
or how do you just give me that the support that I'm feeling that I need? So boundaries.
Yes, and sometimes we need to tell people what is what we need, and what is exactly what is going to be helpful to us,
Hmm.
because people feel, they think that they're helping you,
Right, they
kind
might
of
mean
like, come
well.
on,
Right.
they need to cheer you on,
Hmm.
they need to encourage you, probably what you need
Hmm.
is a little bit of a push, and you can say clearly, what is happening, and no, that's not what I need at this point, and thank you so much for your concern, but I'm okay at this point. Now, I would like to make the distinction, so probably that will be helpful for this person to explore. How are you doing socially? Are you
Hmm.
opening yourself to other social experience, or this is happening in all the
In
areas?
everything. And
So,
that's a very good point, because you may not want to date, you may not want to have an intimate relationship in that sense, but how are you creating a life? What has your life looked like since your partner passed, right? What are you doing? Because one thing again is intentionally choosing to be peaceful and to do some of your own thing and have more of that kind of independence, and another thing is to isolate. right? To isolate and to feel then that aloneness. Okay. So I think that's a great point to reflect on. Do you have other activities in your life? Do you have other people that you do things? She does mention that she has, several people have said, friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would invite her to think about how these friends and family support her or not, right? In the case of being able to set some good boundaries. But then what other kinds of ways in her life would she want to have some social things that may or may not include actual romantic dating?
Yeah, and we want to acknowledge also that the process of dating is really, yeah, time and energy consuming. We know that. We know the complexity of day to day, like, the current stage of situations of
Right.
dating is
Right.
it's not as easy probably as it was when this person was dating, initially with the
Mm-hmm.
former husband. And so we have to acknowledge that. So, that's the reason why a lot of people make the decision, not only in her situation but in other situations, kind of like to push this a little bit further. But the fact that it's not easy doesn't mean that it's impossible.
Right.
So that's another thing. And just if the situation come at some point, the fact that you do like little steps in that direction really doesn't mean that you are betraying anything. So that will be important. Kind of like if at some point there is any intention, any desire, any little thing, kind of like give yourself permission to explore. You can explore and you can go back.
Right. You can step in and you can step out.
Yes.
So we want to leave you with these recommendations to take your time. It's your unique time to process and ask yourself some of these questions. Okay, to create a little bit of a social life and see how you feel with that. And at the end of the day, if you're not sure, if you want to have some reflecting place to do this, we encourage you to do this in a professional setting. Then you can talk with a counselor, with a life coach, with a grief coach, which can just be your interactive mirror as you ask yourself some of these questions. So these are our recommendations for today.
Yes.
We hope that you will join us on our next episode where we're going to discuss how to identify and how to manage a gaslighter. See you then.